Boy, there were bottles flying everywhere. It was quite the shock.
Tonight on the NewsHour, Anchorage shaken to the core. What this major earthquake has done to our city and what may lie ahead as the tremors continue.
Rocking and rolling, the quake sends a dangerous shower of rocks and boulders onto the Seward Highway.
And flying off the shelves, how the quake turned some local businesses into a big mess today with items flying all over the place.
Plus, we have some tips on how to keep your home safe.
The NewsHour starts now.
You're watching KTUU Channel 2 Anchorage, Alaska's news source. And now, the Channel 2 NewsHour from the state's #1 news team.
Good evening. People are still trying to get home tonight after a nerve-wracking day.
Now we have a helicopter in the air tonight. We're going to take a live look at what's going on the Glen Highway right now. Happening now on the NewsHour here on Channel 2 is Tracy Sinclair. Tracy?
Hey, Mike, Rebecca. It is quite a scene out here on the Glen Highway. We're kind of flying right over that area where we're going from 3 lanes down to 1. This is where the bottleneck occurs. Basically, it's trying to bypass the Eagle River Bridge, which we flew over earlier. You could definitely see the cracks in that bridge. Of course, there are a couple of other areas a little farther down the Glen that have other issues. So likely to be a bottleneck close to the Mirror Lake area as well, and including if you're going that direction. And, of course, we still have that damage out at the Palmer Overpass. But you can see traffic is moving, but it is moving slowly. Now, we're starting to see a few fewer cars come in off the Fort Richardson over the J-Bear area, but still a lot of traffic still entering this line of cars. And so anybody that's listening on the radio, just keep your patience with you. It is going to be a slow go, but cars are moving. There's a pretty consistent travel path with these cars going through. So everybody just stay safe and realize you do have kind of a pretty tight bottleneck of 3 lanes down to 1 in a very short space.
Tracy Sinclair in a helicopter high above the Glen Highway tonight. And late this afternoon, the Anchorage Police Chief Justin Dahl announcing some changes in the traffic patterns to try to accommodate all this. Let's go live now to Channel 2's Jill Burke, who's standing by with Chief Dahl. Jill?
Good evening. Chief Dahl, can you just talk about the traffic pattern change again, why we made this one decision?
Sure, yeah. So obviously the traffic going from Anchorage out to the valley most weekday evenings is very, very heavy, and the traffic coming into town is fairly light during that time. Even though that a lot of people have been sort of headed back to the valley throughout the course of the day, we knew there'd be a lot of extra traffic during the evening rush hour. So we wanted to maximize our ability to let traffic go out to the valley during that time period. So we elected to close the one inbound lane and have all 3 lanes go outbound. Obviously, with the damage to the highway, we're not able to use the 3 normal inbound lanes, so we've had some of that inbound traffic diverted into the normal outbound lanes. And we just shut that diversion down temporarily so all that traffic can flow out to the valley as smooth as possible. We didn't anticipate that taking a whole long time, as I think I mentioned earlier, about a half an hour to an hour, and then we'd open up that 1 inbound lane again. We're just trying to get people home as efficiently as we can.
Thanks. And I do have another question for you. But, you know, one of the things that we learned earlier today is that there are no known fatalities connected to this event, which is a blessing. People are very thankful for that, that with such a large earthquake, we have a relatively small amount of damage compared to the scale of the earthquake. Not to say that the damage isn't small itself. One thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned you felt the earthquake. You were in a downtown building when it happened. Tell me about that moment. And then you said even before it stopped shaking, police started deploying out into the community.
No, that's right. So obviously APD has its new downtown headquarters location. We have just a little bit of staff moved in already as we're sort of working our way into getting the building ready for us. My office happened to be one of the early ones to be moved because I don't have much that needs to be moved down there. And I was there with my assistant and some other of the admin staff. I think anybody that's lived in Alaska for a long time knows what feeling an earthquake is like. You know, you feel a little bit of shock and you think, oh, we're having an earthquake. And but it got stronger and continued, and everybody became a little bit concerned. It was certainly the strongest earthquake I've felt since I've lived in Anchorage since 1985. And so as soon as it started to taper off, I immediately contacted the dispatch center, make sure 911 was still working, make sure that we still had that emergency infrastructure in place to receive calls from residents. I started checking in with units in the field, giving supervisors some instruction on things to start checking on. And by the time I turned my portable radio on, which really the shaking hadn't even started yet, I could hear the police officers that were already in the field doing the things we expect them to do, checking on critical infrastructure, checking with people that they could see, checking the buildings they were nearby, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief Justin Dahl. We know that they will have extra staff out and about on the streets along with Anchorage Fire Department. So if you see them, know that they're out doing the work that they need to clean up after this event. Back to you.
All right, Joe Burke reporting live for us tonight. Governor Bill Walker did an aerial tour of Anchorage to check out the damage earlier today. Channel
2's Rich Maurer was there as the governor gave his report to the entire state. Live on Channel 2, Rich.
Well, yes, the governor had a press conference today. He basically talked about how much he really appreciated Alaskans helping Alaskans, how much he appreciated the first responders, how much he appreciated even the federal government coming in and offering assistance. Which brings us to another point. The people, we're in the State Emergency Operations Center here. You can see there's a lot of activity here. People are calling in with damage to their houses. They're saying, don't do that. Call your local government, call your municipality, report it, take a picture, document it somehow, and then make a repair. And if you need to, file with the state or file with your insurance company. But no one knows at this point what the disaster declaration means in terms of who's paying for what. So there's no point calling the state. At this point, you're just clogging up a line. Mike?
I can't say enough about the first responders. As we flew over the highways that were traffic diverted, they were there immediately, putting people over on the other side of the highway, closing down some of the highways. Some of it was done in precautionary stage. The airport, the upper ramps were closed just to check those out first. Those are now all open again.
And there's been a lot of closures for people checking things out. The railroad was closed today while people check out the tracks and the line. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline was closed for a while, but now has been reopened with no damage found. So all in all, it was a major quake, but there's not a lot of damage. Rich Maurer?
All right. Rich Maurer reporting live for us tonight. Rich, thanks for the update. Now, Rebecca, one of the images from this quake that I think we're all going to remember for years was that scene of what happened at Minnesota Drive and International Airport Road.
It definitely was. A couple went into a wild ride. The road beneath them collapses. Channel 2's Hank Davis is there live tonight. Hank.
That's right, Mike, Rebecca. I think that everyone in Southeast Alaska got that complimentary wake-up call at around 8:30 this morning. That earthquake rocking the area and doing some damage. We're still at the scene of some of the worst of that damage. You mentioned Minnesota Drive behind the camera. This is the on-ramp. This gets up onto the International Airport Road, heads to the airport. Very busy area, a lot of travel. So you can see the crews out here working diligently. Their goal right now is to get that sinkhole cleared out, get rid of all the loose material that the earthquake shook around, and then to get this road operating back normal again. You know, the on-ramp southbound also shut down right now. They've got a crew over there assessing that damage as well. For now, they're asking people to kind of plan around this area, not to go there. We actually talked to some of the MDOT crew, or some of the Department of Transportation crew members earlier this afternoon. They told us a little bit about the project, and we caught up with the couple that was inside of a car that was inside of that sinkhole hours ago.
Well, the whole car started weaving, and so we started slowing down, and as we went up the on-ramp, everything around us started crumbling away. Yeah, it was a little scary.
You can see that they were actually in pretty good spirits. Their car slowly sank down into the bottom of that sinkhole. Neither of those passengers injured. They got their car out safely. No damage to the car, surprisingly, but plenty of damage here on the scene. These are just a few of the roads that have been impacted by that earthquake. And again, like I mentioned, if you're trying to get on International Airport Road, you're going to have to pick another intersection. Both the on-ramps in this area closed. Mike, Rebecca?
All right, Hank Davis reporting from Minnesota Drive tonight. Thanks a lot, Hank. We've been reporting all day about the damage and cleanup in the earthquake aftermath.
Now we're hearing more from people who have been directly affected by this event to see how they experienced the earthquake. Channel 2's Derek Mittemeyer joins us live in studio with more. Derek.
Well, Mike and Rebecca, Neil Shelton of Wasilla took a tour of his community just to try to process and assess the extent of this event. This video Shelton took on Vine Road southeast of Wasilla. You can see the extensive damage completely blocking the roadway. Shelton says he was walking down his stairs when the quake struck, that his house felt like it was on springs. He says this was unlike anything he's experienced since moving here from North Carolina, but it's just the reality of living in the state of Alaska.
You know, it's Alaska. Everything, there's no middle ground in Alaska. Everything's extreme, from the seasons to just anything. So it's all, all part of being here. And I actually enjoy it. So it was an experience.
Now, Shelton also took a trip to a gas station near his home, Turner's Corner. Coming up later in the NewsHour, we will hear from the owner of that store about what he lost, as well as what he gained by staying open for business. Mike, Rebecca?
All right, thanks a lot, Derek. Some amazing video from that gentleman out there in the valley.
It's shocking to see. I'm so glad nobody was hurt. It's shocking nobody was hurt.
Yep. All right, the first quake hit at 8:30 this morning. This is still an ongoing situation tonight. Joe Burke is standing by with Anchorage Mayor Ethan Berkowitz. Joe?
Good evening. We're here at the Emergency Operations Center. Just a short while ago, we had a press conference, and the municipal leaders were explaining that they're in the process of pivoting through the initial damage assessment. And Mayor Berkowitz, where do we stand at this time?
I think we're in a position where we're feeling very comfortable with the progress that's been made during the course of the day. We think that things are very stable. Many people have returned home. Most people have returned home. Most of the city water and sewers is back in operation. Power is back on, and we're just getting things back to normal. But it's going to take a while, and we're very grateful that people weren't really hurt in the course of this.
And you had mentioned that you felt that in relationship to the scale of the earthquake, the scale of the damage is smaller than one might anticipate.
We had a 7-point-something earthquake, and when you look at the fact that we had no fatalities and that the amount of infrastructure damage was fairly isolated, the number of structural damage was fairly minimal, you compare it to what would have happened and what has happened in other earthquake-hit areas in the world, we have done amazingly well, and we've done well because we were prepared for an event like this. Our building codes were strong, we built well, and the population here, the Alaskan public, knows what to do and takes care of itself and takes care of one another.
And walk me through the next couple of hours and maybe the next day in terms of priorities. What's the number one priority, and then where do we move on from there the next 4, 8, 12 hours?
So the immediate priority is to make sure people stay safe, and that if there are folks who are in need of immediate shelter, that we can find shelter for them for the immediate evening and maybe the next day or so. That's the biggest priority. We're going to make sure that there's a lot of first responders who are available to deal with any of the emergencies that might exist, and we are just drawing down some of the initial response, taking a breath, and seeing where we are when we do our next assessment.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Mayor Ethan Berkowitz, City Mayor in Anchorage. So we heard that residents are being encouraged to boil water. That's a precautionary measure only to make sure that nothing has been contaminated. There are no known issues, but again, the Anchorage AWWU is recommending that people boil their water at this time. We've heard that the north-south road corridors are open. There may be detours and delays. Individuals still encouraged to shelter in place, take care of one another, go out, check on your neighbors as well, be prepared for those aftershocks. So that means have on hand what you might need to ride something out in case a larger event takes place again, and that would mean have your fire extinguisher, have some flashlights, make sure you have some food and water. They're going to have another update tomorrow, and they're going to work here throughout the evening. Back to you guys.
All right, Jill, thanks so much for the update. And the mayor mentioned, Rebecca, one of their top priorities is making sure people here in Anchorage have a safe and warm place to stay tonight.
That's very important. That's when they were going to turn things over to Beth Verge to tell us a little bit about how that is working out. Beth, where are you? And tell us about what the story is.
Yeah, Mike, Rebecca, I'm outside the Egan Center in downtown Anchorage. Right now, it is bitter cold downtown, but that area is actually serving as a warming shelter for tonight.
I was very, very panicked and quite shaken up.
So we talked a little bit with people who were inside the shelter earlier today. There were less than 24 people in there, and only a handful were there specifically because of the earthquake. But they all said that they were thankful to have a space to go to. As for what's visible here in downtown Anchorage right now, a lot of streets got the traffic moving, but lights are out in some sections. There are windows that have fallen out of some of the taller buildings, and so there are areas that are cordoned off as well. So you want to watch out for those if you are walking downtown. And then, of course, the icy streets, things like that, the normal, those are all still going on. But again, the Egan Center, is serving as a warming shelter for tonight, and we'll bring you more of this story later in the NewsHour.
All right, thanks a lot. Beth Verge reporting from downtown Anchorage tonight. We've heard so many here, we're hearing stories from so many of our viewers sharing how they felt as the quake happened.
I love Alaska. I'm not leaving.
That's what a lot of people told us today. Our live coverage continues as we go around South Central to survey the damage. All right, welcome back to our continuing coverage of this major seismic event that hit the Anchorage area and a big portion of South Central today.
It is all anybody is talking about right now.
Yep, and a lot of people are still dealing with it, trying to get home tonight. We have a helicopter in the air tonight, and Tracy Sinclair is high above the Glen Highway. Tracy, give us an update. How is the traffic situation headed outbound?
Well, we're still dealing, obviously, with some very heavy traffic. We're right near the exit from J-Bear, of course, on the Fort Richardson side. And what I can say is when we first went up in the air at 5 o'clock, there was a massive line of traffic across this bridge all the way into the Fort Ridge area. Now, this has gone down. We've only got about 5 cars on the bridge, so we are starting to see the traffic, at least almost like the tail end, but we're still seeing those cars come in from Anchorage. So at this point, we are just dealing with the heavy traffic, very consistent. Right before the Eagle River Bridge, we go down from 3 lanes down to 1, and that's what's slowing everybody down. Once you get through Eagle River, we do have a bit of a clearing area, and people can move at a higher speed. Things break up a little bit. There's also likely a couple more bottlenecks depending on how far out you are heading. So we want to give everybody a heads up to just kind of hold your patience. We've still got cars coming in on the Glen Highway from the Anchorage area. So we're not quite seeing the end of this yet coming through this night. Mike, Rebecca?
All right, Tracy, thanks so much. And Rebecca, one of the things that Chief Dahl mentioned in their press conference late this afternoon was the chief is cautioning people these road situations are not going to end in a day or two.
No, and it's good to see that, more, as he mentioned, more people are getting home at this point. Most people are home for the day. You can definitely see the traffic is lessening out there, which is great. Right. People are getting home safely.
Yep. All right, well, the Glen Highway, the Seward Highway, and several major priority roads in South Central have damage.
We have damage on all of our high priority roads. So the Glen, the Seward, Minnesota, well, there's a lot of stuff out there. So.
The Department of Transportation says as soon as the quake was over, it had crews out there. They inspected up to 100 miles from the epicenter, and on the Seward Highway, there are still rocks coming down.
We still have rockfall going on the Seward Highway past Potter's Marsh, where you have rocks coming down. With every one of these aftershocks we've received, it's a little more unstable and a little more rock comes down.
Of course, this will take months to fix all of the damage. DOT says it also is closely inspecting all of the bridges in the area.
Yeah, you were supposed to be on a plane to the governor-elect's inauguration on Monday.
I'm supposed to be leaving on Sunday for that.
Yeah, and we've been told just a few minutes ago that was supposed to be in Norfolk Monday before noon. We're told by Governor-elect Mike Dunleavy's spokesperson just a few minutes ago, those plans are still kind of in flux. They have not made a firm final decision as to whether they're going to proceed with that, of course, with the developments of the day.
And it's interesting, today is actually the Governor Walker's official last day on the job. He was in an elevator at the Atwood building when all of this happened, and quite the last day at work.
Yep. A scary way out. All right.
When we come back, we're going to go talk with NewsHour about gas safety. The company says it has been very busy fixing leaks today. Let's bring Jackie Purcell into the mix to talk about the earthquakes we've been having today.
You know, Jackie and I were talking about this earlier. When you look on the map, it looks like a swarm of earthquakes. We had the big one hit just a few.
Say like there's like every 30 minutes now.
I was looking at the charts, and it seemed like every 30 minutes. And I think we're going to go to Jackie now, who's got a chart up.
That's right. I got the weather computer up so you can see that swarm of earthquakes there that have resulted as a result of an outcropping of the original earthquake that happened this morning at 8:29 a.m. So let's take a look at that graphic again, because we're going to show you what is causing these earthquakes. It's a very tectonically oriented place here in Alaska. We've had at least 14 aftershocks since this morning, ranging from 4.0 to 5.7 magnitude. It's all because of the Pacific plate sliding underneath the North American plate, and that boundary is right along the Aleutians. It's called a mega thrust boundary, and when that plate slides underneath, there is slippage, and sometimes it's a big jolt to the terrain on the surface. So that is exactly the type of situation that happened for us today, that 7.0 magnitude earthquake this morning. And for our current conditions right now, it's been a fairly mild day, 25 degrees. The winds are calm, and that is seen out of Cuddy Park here in Midtown. Now for tonight, we'll see some snowfall. It could be up to an inch into the later hours, and then start mixing with rain and snow. Yes, that's the danger. Here's a look at, did you see that shift? Well, that was when the earthquake occurred, and this was really from the early morning hours out of our Glen Alps camera. Here's a look at the Pacific, and we're going to kind of wind it up and push it into the state of Alaska, where we see a fairly vigorous storm system starting to blast through the southwestern part of the state. Started really last night, but here they are with some mix of rain and snow coming their way. A lot of that cloud cover continuing to push all the way into the interior, sliding into south central as we speak, really. So there it is, the messy situation over southwest Alaska. A little bit of snow way up there toward Hooper Bay, but then that rain snow line, and then that push of warm air, turning a lot of that to just plain rain. They're looking pretty quiet into the interior, at least in the last several hours. They're cold too, 1 below. We even see sub-zero temperatures around Ukqiavik, 5 at Dead Horse, 29 back into the Anchorage area, and wow, look at those temperatures out through the Aleutians, and these are the kinds of temperatures that are going to be swinging in and swinging our way across the south central area. I am still on track to see temperatures go up to the low 40s for daytime highs tomorrow here into Anchorage. Well, we're going to continue to see a series of low pressure systems move on through. Here we are into the Saturday time frame, and there's still going to be a host of winter weather advisories, maybe even warnings, along with some gusty winds along those coastal areas, as this series of low pressure systems just makes a parade line right up the west coast. Now for your forecast, it's south central that we're looking at, and we'll see some snow Friday, maybe even some freezing rain into the forecast for your Saturday. Those temperatures are going to slowly start to come up. Here's a look at our 7-day forecast for the Anchorage area, going for that rain snow mix tomorrow. 36 for the high temperature on Sunday and Monday. A little bit of a cool down on Tuesday, but again on the above average side of winter. Here we go. A mix of rain and snow entering the region. It's going to be a weekend of cleanup because of all the, displaced items from this earthquake. But let's end it with saying, have a pleasant weekend, everyone.
A good positive thought. Another
Yes,
blessing
really,
of this, Jackie,
Jackie.
we're not dealing with bitterly cold, sub-zero temperatures.
That
in all
is
of this.
so true, Mike and Rebecca. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you
Thanks
back
so
in a
much,
few
Jackie.
minutes. All right, looking for major infrastructure issues. Coming up on the NewsHour, we'll have an update on the condition of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline after this big earthquake. All right, welcome back. All of the big shaking today threw businesses for a loop during today's earthquake.
Now, what's the impact like for small businesses? Channel 2's Kaylinda Kindle has the details from small business owners today.
Hi there, Mike and Rebecca. Well, small business owners told me they're feeling the impact after today's earthquake. I caught up with one owner of Pete's Violin Shop who says he has tens of thousands of dollars worth of instruments destroyed. Outside Peter's violin shop, it looks like a normal day. But inside shows a very different story.
Open the door and see this, so it takes a while to sink in.
After a 7.0 magnitude earthquake, the damage is setting in for owner Peter Buczynski of Peter's violin shop.
Pretty impressive here.
Around each corner, more and more destruction.
It's amazing. Something like this can survive 100 years, and then you have an earthquake.
Buczynski said he opted out of earthquake insurance.
As a small business owner, you don't think about a total loss, and this was not a total loss, but you don't really, you kind of look at the premiums, and it's so expensive, and especially the earthquake we had a few years ago. I looked into it after that, and the quote they gave me was, pretty high, and I figured, I could do it, but, it's hard enough running a small business as it is in today's economy. But everything you add on top of it, it's almost you can't make ends meet.
Now feeling the impact, he knows he has more problems with the power out.
40%. Once it drops to 39, 38%, then we start having problems. All of these instruments in here are made out of wood, and when it drops below 40%, the instruments start drying out and cracking.
But he says he hasn't lost hope.
But we'll get through it like we do. Alaskans are tough, and we all come together. We'll make it work.
Kaylinda Kindle, Channel 2 News. Now, the owner says for all small business owners, he's hopeful that Alaskans will come together during this difficult time. Mike and Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Kaylinda. After the break, we're going to go back to Jill Burke. She is standing by with the department chair and the fire chief for the Anchorage Fire Department. Welcome back. It was a pretty scary situation. Immediately after the earthquake, a house caught fire in Midtown, burning it to the ground.
Now, luckily, no one was injured in that fire, but the home is believed to be a total loss. Channel 2 Sean McGuire is live tonight from the site of that fire and has more about how to stay safe during an earthquake and gas leaks. Sean?
Mike and Rebecca, the big message from NSAR at the moment is that if you suspect there is a gas leak or you smell a gas leak, you need to get out of your house immediately, call NSAR, and then they'll send a crew to make sure it's safe before you enter. Now, if you look behind me, you'll see the house is looking like a near total loss. The garage area is lit up. They think they may have been able to save that. Firefighters are coming back and forth doing what's called fire follow-up. That's where they're going to spray water on areas that are hot to try and cool them down, to try and stop another fire from starting and potentially destroying the house further. This morning when firefighters arrived, they arrived to a very different scene. Billowing smoke seen for miles around near 76th Avenue and C Street.
We got a call right after the earthquake. It stated there was smoke coming from the structure, and due to the earthquake, all units are responding everywhere else around the city. We were a single unit resource initially, and got here, and then they upgraded it, and then had to divide all the units back out amongst all the other problems around the city. So.
Passers-by saw a house fully engulfed. The home was a total loss. Firefighters worked into the late morning to save the garage.
Nah, the earthquake probably was a contributing factor, but won't know until we do an investigation on it once we have the sources available. No. It's a long morning.
Rose Sandhofer says her father and stepmother lived in the house and they were able to get out safely.
But the house has been there for a long time. He came up in 58, and the house was built in the early 60s. So it has been in the neighborhood for a long time.
NSTAR crews were also there, making sure there weren't any gas leaks.
We were just there for precautionary purposes, making sure that it wasn't gas-related, which it appears that it was not.
A home lost, but a loss put in perspective.
Totally happy that nobody's hurt. It could have been a lot worse.
Now APD crews have been busy all day, but so have NSTAR crews who have been working across their service area to try and assess potential damage to gas lines as well as to fix gas leaks. Now crews are working over 3,000 miles of natural gas pipe from Houston all the way down to Homer. Now the most damage is believed to be in Eagle River, close to the epicenter of the earthquake. I'm told downtown is also an area of interest because there is steel pipe that is more liable to split than the plastic pipe used across most of the service area. NSTAR's President John Sims has this recommendation about how to stay safe.
At this point in time, we're responding to about 170 pending calls for leaks that people have smelled for gas. If you are a customer that smells gas, please leave the area and then call NSTAR Natural Gas, and we'll respond as quickly as possible.